Stones of Memory. A journey through the footsteps of the Bible. Imagine walking in the same places where great men and women of the Bible lived, stories that changed the course of humanity. Every stone, every ruin, every landscape bears traces of faith, miracles, and encounters with God. These are not merely dusty archaeological sites. They are portals into a sacred past where the divine intersected with the human. Today, we will travel through 12 impressive places from the Bible, discovering what the Word says about them and what they are like today. Get ready, because some still preserve the sacred atmosphere of thousands of years ago. And the last one will surprise you. 1. Bethlehem. Where heaven touched earth. Bethlehem, a small name, but one that echoes through the centuries like a bell in the night. Long before it was the scene of Jesus' birth, Bethlehem already held profound importance in the history of Israel. It was called the City of David because it was here, amidst these rocky hills, that a young shepherd boy was anointed king by the prophet Samuel. The oil ran down David's head, marking the beginning of a journey that would change the entire nation and establish a royal lineage. Centuries later, the prophet Micah looked toward this humble town and announced the impossible, that out of little Bethlehem would come the ruler of Israel. A prophecy fulfilled on a quiet night, when the cry of an infant pierced the darkness. It was here, in a simple grotto, that Mary gave birth to Jesus, demonstrating that God chooses humble places to reveal His glory. He did not choose a palace in Rome or a temple in Jerusalem. He chose a stable in Bethlehem. Today, in the same place where tradition claims this extraordinary event took place, stands the Basilica of the Nativity. Entering it is like stepping through a portal in time. You must bow low to enter the door of humility, a physical reminder of the reverence required. Inside, ancient walls hold the scent of incense and the soft, flickering light of candles. Descending a narrow staircase, one arrives at a small stone grotto. There, beneath an altar, a silver star on the floor marks the spot where Jesus is said to have been born. Pilgrims from all over the world kneel, touch the star, and weep in silence, overwhelmed by the mystery of the Incarnation. But Bethlehem also offers a stark contrast. To enter the city, one must pass through a high concrete wall that separates Israel from the West Bank. It is a sobering reminder that the city that saw the birth of the Prince of Peace still lives with deep divisions. Even so, every stone and every street in Bethlehem continues to proclaim that hope came into the world here, proving that light shines brightest in the dark. 2. Mount Carmel, the altar of fire. Mount Carmel is one of the most striking settings in the Bible. Located in northern Israel, overlooking the Mediterranean Sea and the vast, fertile valley of Jezreel, it stands as a natural fortress. But its true significance is spiritual. It became the scene of one of the greatest confrontations ever recorded. It was here that the prophet Elijah stood alone against the spiritual corruption of his nation. The people had strayed, following the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 of Asherah. In the book of 1 Kings, chapter 18, the scene unfolds with dramatic intensity. 2 altars were erected, one for the Lord and the other for Baal. The pagan prophets cried out for hours, shouted, danced, and even wounded themselves, desperate for fire to descend from heaven. But the sky remained silent. Then Elijah approached the ruined altar of the Lord. He restored it with 12 stones representing the tribes of Israel, placed the sacrifice upon it, and ordered it to be doused with water 3 times until the trench around it was completely drenched. He prayed a simple prayer, "O Lord, answer me, so that these people may know that you are God." And at that moment, fire fell from heaven. It consumed the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and even licked up the water in the trench. It was an undeniable demonstration that only the Lord is God. Today, at the top of Mount Carmel, stands a monastery called Morocco, which means the place of burning. There, a fierce statue of Elijah with a raised sword commemorates this powerful episode. From the roof of the monastery, one can contemplate the valley of Jezreel below, a landscape that also carries prophetic importance for the future. To be on Mount Carmel is to feel that true faith has the power to change history. It was in this place that God showed He doesn't need majorities. He needs hearts willing to believe. 3. The Sea of Galilee. The Lake of Miracles. Despite its name, the Sea of Galilee is not a sea, but a large freshwater lake surrounded by green hills in northern Israel. It is small in size compared to the oceans, but immense in meaning, because it was here that Jesus experienced decisive moments in his ministry. To its shores, he called simple fishermen Peter, Andrew, James, and John with words that echo to this day, "Come, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." Matthew 4:19. It was on this lake that Jesus slept in the stern of a boat during a violent squall, only to rise and calm the storm with just his voice, revealing his authority over creation. Mark 4:39. And it was also here that he performed one of his most impactful miracles, walking on water in the darkness of night, while the frightened disciples struggled against the waves. Matthew 14:25. Today, the Sea of Galilee remains virtually unchanged. Those who sail its waters have almost the same view the disciples had 2,000 years ago: the surrounding hills, the sudden winds, the shimmering light on the water. In 1986, a drought revealed something extraordinary: a wooden boat, some 2,000 years old, preserved at the bottom of the lake. Known as the Jesus boat, it is on display in a nearby museum, like a time capsule connecting archaeology and faith. The Sea of Galilee continues to be called the Lake of Miracles, because every wave, every breeze that blows over its waters, seems to still carry the memory of when the Son of God himself walked there. 4. Beth Shean, the tragic end of Saul. Among the fertile valleys of Israel lay a strategic city called Beth Shean. It was the intersection of important trade routes connecting the Jordan Valley to the north of the country, making it a key point both militarily and economically. But in the Bible, it is the setting for one of the darkest episodes in Israel's history. In 1 Samuel 31, we read about the battle in which King Saul faced the Philistines on the nearby Mount Gilboa. Severely wounded and facing defeat, he took his own life rather than fall into the hands of his enemies. After his death, the Philistines found the bodies of Saul and his sons. In a gesture of humiliation and contempt, they hung their headless bodies on the walls of Beth Shean. It was the sad end of Israel's first king, a reign marked by disobedience and distance from God. Today, visitors to Beth Shean find one of Israel's most impressive archaeological sites. Wide stone streets are still preserved. Towering Roman columns remain standing, and there is a huge theater with a capacity for thousands of people. The city has been rebuilt several times throughout history, including during the Roman period, and each archaeological layer reveals a new era of grandeur. Walking through Beth Shean is like leafing through the pages of various civilizations. But it is also a somber reminder that even kings can fall when they decide to turn away from God's presence. It is a place that speaks of glory, ruin, and the weight of choices. 5. Damascus, the path of conversion. Among the oldest cities still inhabited in the world is Damascus, the capital of Syria. With over 400 years of continuous history, its streets bear witness to a scene that forever changed the course of Christianity: the conversion of Saul of Tarsus. In Acts 9, we read that Saul, filled with religious zeal and breathing threats, set out from Jerusalem for Damascus, determined to arrest followers of Jesus. But on the way, a light brighter than the sun shone around him, and he fell to the ground. Then he heard a voice saying, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" It was Christ himself calling him to a new mission. Blinded and humiliated, The man who came to conquer was led by the hand into the city. 3 days later, at the house of Judas on a street called Straight, a disciple named Ananias prayed for him. Something like scales fell from his eyes. Saul received sight and a new calling, becoming the Apostle Paul, the greatest missionary of the gospel. Today, in Damascus, the famous Straight Street mentioned in Acts 9 still exists, cutting through the old city. There is a small chapel built over the spot where, according to tradition, Paul regained his sight. Walking down this street, surrounded by ancient buildings and oriental markets full of colors, aromas, and voices, is like reliving that decisive moment. Damascus remains alive and vibrant, but it also carries in its heart one of the most powerful stories of transformation, a persecutor's encounter with the Savior. 6. Shiloh, the first center of worship, long before Jerusalem became the spiritual heart of Israel. There was another place that gathered people to seek God, Shiloh. It was here, in the quiet hills of Ephraim, that the tabernacle, the tent of meeting built by Moses in the desert, stood for over 300 years. According to Joshua 18:1, Shiloh served as the first permanent center of worship for the people of Israel. Here, the Ark of the Covenant rested. Entire families came to offer sacrifices, celebrate the Lord's feasts, and worship. It was also in this setting that one of the most moving prayers in the Bible took place. Hannah, distressed and bitter of soul because she was unable to have children, wept before the Lord at the entrance of the tabernacle. She poured out her soul, and her prayer was heard. The boy Samuel was born, becoming a prophet and judge in Israel. 1 Samuel 1. Today, Shiloh is an archaeological site amidst tranquil hills. Excavations have revealed stone platforms and foundations that likely supported the tabernacle structure. You can walk along trails where multitudes once wandered and imagine the sound of songs, the smell of incense, and the expectation of families before God. Being in Shiloh is like returning to the beginning of organized worship in Israel. It's remembering that before grand temples of stone, there was a people who sought the Lord with simplicity and faith, and that God hears even the most silent prayer whispered in tears. 7. The Dead Sea, the lake that knows no life. The Bible often mentions the region of the Dead Sea, a unique place on earth. Located more than 400 meters below sea level, it is the lowest point on the planet. Its waters have a salinity 10 times greater than that of the oceans, creating an environment so harsh that it makes it impossible for fish and plants to live. Hence, it is called the Dead Sea. Near this region were the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, destroyed by fire from heaven because of their wickedness. Genesis 19. The arid and desolate surroundings, with their strange salt formations and stark cliffs, still seem to carry the memory of judgment and silence. Today, the Dead Sea is one of Israel's most visited destinations. Those who enter its oily, mineral-rich waters experience the unique sensation of floating effortlessly, as if the lake itself were pushing the body upward. But beyond the tourist experience, the region holds precious secrets. It was in the nearby caves of Qumran that archaeologists discovered the famous Dead Sea Scrolls. These scrolls, over 2,000 years old, preserve entire books and fragments of the Hebrew Bible. This discovery is considered one of the greatest archaeological finds of the 20th century, confirming the faithfulness of the biblical text throughout the centuries. The Dead Sea is a place where nature and archaeology unite to remind us that even in barren lands, God holds treasures that strengthen faith. 8. Caesarea Maritima, the port of the Gentiles. On the shores of the Mediterranean Sea, King Herod built one of the most impressive cities of his time, Caesarea Maritima, with a massive artificial harbor constructed with underwater concrete, luxurious palaces, aqueducts carrying fresh water, and a huge hippodrome. It was a symbol of Roman power and engineering in Israel. But more than a city of political grandeur, Caesarea became a spiritual landmark. It was here that the Apostle Peter, guided by a vision, entered the house of the Roman centurion Cornelius. Peter preached the gospel to a Gentile for the first time, Acts 10. The Holy Spirit descended upon Cornelius and his family, shattering the barrier between Jew and Gentile and showing that salvation was for all people. This episode changed the course of the Christian faith and paved the way for the expansion of the church throughout the world. Furthermore, it was in Caesarea that the Apostle Paul was imprisoned for 2 years before being taken to Rome, Acts 23-25. Imagine the contrast, a city built to display Roman luxury and pagan power, but which became the stage for the propagation of Christ's simple and powerful message. Today, visitors to Caesarea can walk through the ruins of the Roman theater, still used for performances. The mosaics of the ancient palaces remain preserved, and the sound of the waves crashing against the walls of the ancient port reminds us that this was a place where history and faith met. Caesarea Maritima is proof that God chooses the most unlikely places, even the seats of imperial power, to open doors and transform lives. 9. Mount Nebo, Moses' last gaze. Mount Nebo, in present-day Jordan, holds one of the most moving scenes in the Bible. After leading the people of Israel for 40 years through the trials of the desert, Moses climbed to the top of this mountain. From there, God showed him the promised land. In Deuteronomy 34, we read that the Lord said, "This is the land I promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I will let you see it with your own eyes, but you will not cross over." From the top of Nebo, Moses gazed at Canaan, the lush valley of Jericho, the hills of Judea, but his mission ended there. It was the end of a journey of faith, leadership, and intimacy with God. Today, from the top of Mount Nebo, one can enjoy a breathtaking view of the Jordan Valley, the Dead Sea, and, on clear days, even the hills surrounding Jerusalem. There is a memorial church built to commemorate this moment, with beautiful Byzantine mosaics preserved in the floor. A large bronze serpent sculpture also commemorates the episode in the desert when Moses lifted the serpent so that the people could be healed. Standing on Mount Nebo is like feeling the weight of hope and farewell. It's like imagining a leader who dedicated his life to the promise, but could only contemplate it from afar. It is a place of reverence, silence, and reflection on the faithfulness of God, who always fulfills his promises, even if we do not see their completion. 10. Tel Dan, the rival altar, in the far north of Israel, surrounded by verdant vegetation and crystal-clear springs feeding the Jordan River, lies Tel Dan. It is an ancient city of great strategic importance. But in the Bible, it is remembered negatively. It was here that King Jeroboam, after the kingdom was divided into north and south, built a golden calf. He set it up on an altar so that the people of the northern kingdom would no longer go down to Jerusalem to worship the Lord. 1 Kings 12:28-30. This act was considered one of Israel's greatest sins. By replacing true worship with political expediency and idolatry, Jeroboam led entire generations astray, marking Tel Dan as a symbol of the people's infidelity. Imagine the scene: pilgrims arriving with offerings, not to the living God, but to an image made by human hands. Today in Tel Dan, visitors can see the ruins of this altar. The enormous stone platform where sacrifices took place is still preserved. A stark reminder of the warning that even fertile and beautiful places can become the scene of spiritual deception. But Tel Dan also holds an extraordinary discovery. In 1993, archaeologists found the famous Tel Dan stele, an inscription mentioning the House of David. This is one of the most important historical pieces of evidence outside the Bible that King David actually existed. It is a place of contrast. While the altar speaks of idolatry, the stones also confirm the truthfulness of God's word. 11. Beersheba, the well of the oath. On the edge of the Negev desert lies Beersheba, a place steeped in history and faith. The name Beersheba means well of the oath, or well of seven, in reference to the pact made between Abraham and the local king Abimelech, when they sealed an agreement with 7 sheep as a testimony. Genesis 21:31. This moment marked Beersheba as a symbol of covenants before God. It was also from Beersheba that Jacob set out for Aram, carrying God's promise in his heart. Later, the desert surrounding Beersheba was the scene of Hagar and Ishmael's suffering. Cast out and wandering, the water ran out, and they nearly died of thirst. But God heard the boys' cry and showed them a well, proving that even in the driest desert, God can bring life. Genesis 21:19. Today, Beersheba is a modern and vibrant city, but adjacent to it is the archaeological site of Tel Sheva, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. There, you can see the ruins of the ancient city, with well-planned streets, walls, and even an impressive water storage system in underground cisterns. In the center of the site, there is a reconstructed large well that recalls the importance of this place. Walking through Beersheba is to feel the contrast between the dry desert air and the memory that God always provides. It is a reminder that covenants made before the Lord remain firm and that He is faithful in the midst of our greatest needs. 12. Hebron, the city of the patriarchs. Among the Judean hills lies Hebron, one of the oldest cities in Israel and steeped in spiritual significance. It was here that Abraham purchased the cave of Machpelah to bury his wife, Sarah. Genesis 23. It was the first piece of land legally owned by the patriarchs in the Promised Land. Over time, the cave became the tomb of the great patriarchs and matriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Rebekah and Leah. Hebron thus became the city that holds the physical foundations of Israel's faith. But Hebron was not only a burial place, it was also David's first throne. Before ruling over the entire nation from Jerusalem, he reigned here for 7.5 years. According to 2 Samuel 2, 1-4, it was in Hebron that the tribes of Israel recognized him as king, beginning a reign that would unify the nation and usher in a new era of conquest. Today, above the cave of Machpelah stands the monumental tomb of the patriarchs, known to Muslims as the Mosque of Ibrahim. Its walls of enormous stone blocks recall the Herodian architecture of the temple in Jerusalem, massive, imposing, and ancient. The city itself is vibrant and complex. Noisy markets, brimming with spices, pottery, and blown glass, coexist with heavily guarded areas, reflecting modern tension. Being in Hebron is walking through the roots of faith. It's remembering that real men and women, with their successes and failures, lived here and left lasting marks. It is a place that breathes promise, history, and hope. It closes our cycle of the journey through the great settings of the Bible, reminding us that the story is not just written in ink on paper, but in the very dust and stones of the land.